Have you ever experienced a moment when your reason was paralyzed by your greatest desire? I have. It was greed, and that greed led me straight to hell. I was looking for a used car, and like any man in his 40s, I threw all my logic and intuition to the wind for the sweet temptation of a bargain of a lifetime. When I found the car, the rational part of my brain should have screamed a warning. It was a perfect accident-free vehicle. The mileage was low, but the price was ridiculously cheap. It was a deal that defied common sense, like finding a gold nugget lying on the sidewalk. People always ask, why should you always suspect something that's too good? Because behind every perfect deal, there is always a price you cannot afford to pay. I met the seller, a woman in her 30s. She seemed like someone submerged deep underwater. Her eyes were vacant, and she barely spoke during the entire transaction. She looked like she wanted to push this car away as quickly and as far as possible. After signing the papers and taking the keys, I opened the glove compartment, and there I found a photograph, a cheerful family picture, her, a sturdy man who seemed to be her husband, and a young daughter. "Excuse me, ma'am, there's a family photo left in the car." When I offered her the picture, a feeling, the first emotion, appeared in her empty eyes. It wasn't sadness or regret, it was pure terror. She snatched the photo, turned away without a word of goodbye, and hurried out of the parking lot. It was as if that car was a shackle dragging at her ankle. In that moment, I should have realized I wasn't buying a car, I was inheriting her personal hell. I drove home and showed my wife the new car. She wasn't particularly interested, but she forced a smile for my excitement. Then, she sat in the passenger seat and held her nose. "Honey, the car is clean, but don't you smell something weird?" I sniffed around, but I couldn't detect it, only the subtle scent of the previous owner's air freshener. I scoffed at her sensitive nose. "Your nose is too sensitive, it's just the air freshener." But my wife shook her head. "No, it's not air freshener. It smells like something burning. It's acrid and unsettling." The most tragic mistake humans make is dismissing the intuition of those closest to them. I used my own rationality to dismiss my wife's anxiety. I didn't know that the deal of the century I was so pleased with was, in fact, a contract signed with our lives. I stuffed more air fresheners into the car and tried to force myself to forget the smell. A few days later, we were driving back to Seoul after a relative's funeral in Gangwon-do. It was 11 p.m., a long and exhausting day. I entered our home address into the new used car's navigation system and started the drive. The GPS initially guided us along familiar roads, but just before the highway entrance, it suddenly began to direct us onto a different path. At first, I assumed it was rerouting due to traffic congestion. Think about how much we rely on technology and blindly follow a machine's instructions. That night, the navigation system was not a mere machine. It was something with a will, determined to drag us to a specific location. "Honey, did you enter the right address? Why are we on this road?" My wife's voice grew anxious. I sensed something was wrong, but I couldn't turn the wheel. The road seemed like a state highway abandoned after the expressway was built, a dead road with no opposing traffic and barely functioning streetlights. And that's when it started. An unbearable migraine began to crush my head. A pain like someone hitting my temples with a sledgehammer. The throbbing felt like it would force me to stop driving. How much further did we drive? In the darkness, I saw the faint sign of a darkened building, an abandoned rest stop. I pulled the car into the rest stop parking lot. I knew I needed to get off this road quickly, but the overwhelming fatigue and headache made it impossible to continue driving. We were the only car in the lot. The surroundings were pitch black, and the air in the parking lot was heavy as if it hadn't breathed for decades, buried in dust. "Let's sleep for just an hour. If you're not going to sleep, wake me up." I turned to my wife, but she was already deep in slumber. It wasn't normal sleep, it was closer to a collapse of consciousness, as if someone had forcibly taken her awareness. I set the alarm on my phone and reclined the seat. Sleep was pulling me under. This place, this car, this inexplicable headache, they were all driving me to the brink. Just as I was about to drift off, the sound of a rusty iron door slowly opening came from the entrance of the uninhabited rest stop building. I snapped my eyes open. I stared through the front windshield at the rest stop door, but the broken glass door was firmly shut. It was too distinct a metal scraping sound to be just the wind. "Honey, you heard that, right?" I shook my wife's shoulder, but she didn't stir. Her sleep was not normal sleep. It was a deep, unyielding trance. My heart pounded with fear, but I closed my eyes again. People choose denial when confronted with extreme terror. I simply hoped to fall asleep and have it all pass. And just as I was about to sink back into sleep, this time the sound was much closer. It was the sound of footsteps, slow and deliberately getting closer. It was the sound of someone who knew we were there and was coming for us. I bolted upright and turned on the headlights. The powerful light instantly illuminated the surroundings, but there was no one near the car. But now I knew. This abandoned rest stop was not just a place we were passing through. It was someone's final destination, and that someone had led us here. I should have started the engine and fled, but it was too late. I was falling into sleep again, like someone poisoned. In the final moments of my consciousness, I felt my head tilting slowly toward the passenger seat, pulled by an irresistible force. The next moment, I woke up in a haze of confusion and dizziness. I couldn't tell dream from reality. The car was filled with acrid smoke. Coughs racked my body. Next to me, my wife was coughing painfully too. "Open the door! The door!" I frantically pulled the driver's side door handle, but the door wouldn't budge. It was as if it was locked firmly from the outside. And then I heard someone muttering in a low voice outside the door, an inaudible yet chillingly desperate voice. Simultaneously, I witnessed a sight I couldn't believe. A man with a stark white face was sitting on my wife in the passenger seat. He was tightly squeezing her neck with both hands. Her eyes were open, but instead of struggling frantically, she was slowly, painfully gasping for air, as if submerged underwater. I stretched out my hands to push the man away, but my arms were heavy as lead and wouldn't move an inch. This is how I lose my wife. In this smoke, in this horrible nightmare, I felt absolute powerlessness. This car, bought out of greed, was now taking our lives. Smack! Someone violently shook my body. I shot awake, drenched in cold sweat. Still the same deserted rest stop parking lot. The pre-dawn air was cold, but the car heater was still running. The person who woke me was my wife, sitting in the passenger seat. "Honey, I had a strange dream," she whispered, her voice trembling, and the story she told me froze my heart. She, too, had fallen asleep suffering from a terrible headache, and in her nightmare, someone had climbed onto her body and was strangling her. Both of us, at the same time, in the same place, had experienced the same agony. And that burning smell, my wife muttered. The smell I noticed when we first bought the car. She was compelled to lift the passenger floor mat, and underneath, indelible proof remained, a black, scorched mark shaped exactly like a charcoal briquette. As soon as dawn broke, I tracked down the seller, and the truth was more cynical than any supernatural horror. Though the car was legally in her name, her husband, burdened by massive stock market debt, had taken the car without her knowledge and committed suicide by carbon monoxide poisoning at that rest stop. She had hidden the fact and sold this dead car to me quickly to pay off debts. Sometimes humans are more cruel than ghosts. But here is one more chilling truth. The family photo I found and the rest stop the navigation system forcibly directed us to. It was the last rest stop the family had visited together on a trip. The entity that tried to strangle us that night was the spirit of the husband, unable to leave the car or the place where he died. He didn't want us to go home. He wanted to bring us to the exact spot where he was eternally confined. The car was a coffin holding his final moments, and the GPS remembered the only destination that coffin needed to reach. Ultimately, the used car was not just a subject of a transaction, it was a cursed artifact, an amalgamation of one man's despair, his death, and his deep-seated resentment. What about your car? Listening to this story, do you know its entire history? Without your knowledge, under the seat or in the memory of the navigation system, a terrifying secret someone else bore may be slumbering. A secret you were never meant to carry. Where is your car driving you right now? Is it where you want to go or where someone else had to go? I was K Ghost from K Horror Radio. The next story will begin where your deepest sleep should be. You'll be waiting